Today's episode is brought to you by my good friend Andy Bovender, the founder of the Bovender team out of the Carolinas. Him and his team have helped more than 5,000 families. So if you have somebody who's been thinking about making a move to or from that area, they are the team to call. Today, I sit down with Kelly Parker, who's an agent out of Chicago, and she shares how having authentic conversations with clients is what drove her business. Now, before we get started, I want to share again about the Inner Circle group. It's a private group, mostly comprised of past guests, and we share best practices, good ideas, and peer coaching. More importantly, we also share referrals. So if that's something you're curious to learn a little bit more about, follow the link in the description below. And as always, I'm your host and San Francisco referral partner, Shawn Kunkler. Kelly, oh my gosh, our pre-talk was, I was so excited. I'm like, let's just hit record. It's already going in such an amazing direction. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Feels like such a fun honor, to be honest. I've been listening for the last year, and
Yeah.
I heard you hit 100 episodes or beyond, and so
Yeah.
like cheers to you. That's a serious
Thank you.
accomplishment.
It's been a journey.
Yeah.
It's been a journey, that is for sure. But it's really, I reflect on it. I basically have like 2 full work weeks full of conversations with these amazing people like yourself. And I feel like at this point, I'm like the AI of top performers. It's like, what events do they do? And I'm like, all right, or what do they do here? And I'm like, I have
Yeah.
this like Rolodex in my mind of these common threads. So it's actually just been an honor for me to be a part of these conversations.
Yeah. Well, you've had some amazing guests, and I think like what a beautiful gift that you're giving this industry, to share these voices and hundreds of different perspectives and examples for what's possible and
Yeah.
the ways to go about it. Because as you know, and I know, there's an infinite amount of ways to go about
Yeah.
anything we want to achieve in our life. And so it's just really exciting to be here and to break it all down with you.
That has actually been one of the interesting and exciting parts for me is I realized very early in these episodes is there's no one way to the top of the mountain. You
Mhm.
can climb it, you can hike it, you can walk it, you can take a helicopter. There's no right way, and there's no wrong way.
Right.
And the only common thread is the continuous figurative one foot in front of the other. That's it. That's the only common thread.
Yeah, the micro steps, the micro actions.
That's it.
That's it. That's the one consistent thing. And I think it, I love that the more we can give agents permission of that, because I think the thing that can happen really quickly, depending on where you are in your journey with this, is you can lock into a belief that it has to be done a certain way.
Yeah.
And to give so many different examples of like there's just infinite amount of ways. It's the ways that you want to do it. It's the ways that feel good to you.
Mm.
So that you actually take the steps, right? You actually take the actions.
Yeah, and that's so the core philosophy I have with this podcast and I do with my business is it's a JFK quote and is it's a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes.
And so I firmly believe that there's good knowledge out there. There's a lot of noise, but there's good knowledge out there. And then simultaneously to what you're saying is it, just because you've been doing it that way, give yourself permission to explore these other avenues because
Yes.
it may not be better, it may not be worse, but it may just give you a slightly different perspective.
Yeah.
And then ultimately learning, and then that's the component that leads to growth. But one thing that you mentioned right before we recorded is we were joking about production, and you're like, I have no idea what my production is, and
Yeah.
I love that you don't, because that's the badge of honor we all go around and shout about. So I'm curious with you, what do you measure
Yeah.
when you go to bed at night and you feel successful? What is it that makes you feel that way? Have you been completely neglecting your newsletter, social media, or any of your outbound marketing? If so, I have a solution for you. With little to no commitment, a virtual assistant can jump in and help you in those areas you just don't have the time for. For more information about hiring a virtual assistant, go ahead and follow the link in the description below.
It's truly like, how am I serving others? I mean, I got into real estate to truly help people. I got into real estate in
Mm.
2009. No housing market. It had crashed.
Wow. Holy
People
cow.
thought I was totally crazy. They're like, girl, you have a solid job still? All of my friends had lost their jobs. And they're like, you're going to go out and be self-employed. But I have still to this day an incredible soft spot for the power of our homes and what they provide for us. And to watch people start to lose their homes in short sales and foreclosures, and to
Yeah.
know, like, hey, that was not personal. I'm so sorry. You're kind of a product of this thing that's happening, but I can help you at least transition this with some grace and some ease and start a fresh chapter. And it's really always fueled me to, like, how
Mm.
can I help people on their journey, right? Like, you
Yeah.
made a comment about this being a journey, and our tagline at Home Collective is, the journey is just as dear as the destination. And we
I
are
like that.
so committed to everybody, whether that's working with a real estate client or a coaching client, that they have a truly enjoyable experience, because that's actually what this is about, than the
Yeah.
end goal, than the end achievement. And so for me, my measurement is, am I really serving people? Is there meaningful impact? Is there a ripple effect in that impact? That's actually a measurement I look for, right? Like, if I help someone establish this new life chapter in their new home, you better believe that ripples out to their kids and their parents who are now going to come live with them,
Mhm.
and these things. And the same thing in my coaching, to like help people grow their businesses in ways that feel truly good to them, allows them to be better parents and better partners, and really like ripples out. And so I would say those are my measuring sticks of, am I serving in a really meaningful way? And is that allowing for deep fulfillment within? Like, I really don't care about success, because success is usually linked to an achievement. I care about, like, true fulfillment.
Yeah. It's interesting too, from doing all these podcasts. The highly successful agents do have a different perspective. It's it's not just the number or the quantity or the volume sold. It's these other data points that kind of backed into it. Um,
Yeah.
One like really subtle thing is we did on our team is we stopped saying home sold. We say clients
Awesome.
helped.
Yeah. Client served. Yeah. That's what we
And
say.
it clicks like it changes something internally of to your point, it becomes this journey then for us and for
Mm-hmm.
them. Hey, real estate pros, be honest. You know you should be using video, but maybe you feel awkward, don't have the time, or just aren't seeing the results. This is where Kim Rittberg's Video Bootcamp comes in. This live coaching program helps agents create high quality videos quickly and confidently, resulting in leads and clients. Her students have seen results. One landed 3 new clients directly from social media, and others brought in millions of dollars in closed sales. Spots are limited, and to apply now, follow the link in the description below.
Yeah. I mean, I have like a deep reverence for, like, that, what that does for people and how we really help them. And I also think, like, it, we can diminish. I totally just lost my train of thought because I was going to say something, but it'll come back to me. I will find it.
No
I'm so
worries. That's
sorry.
what editors are for.
Okay, great. Okay, good. Dang it. It was like I was like listening so intently to you, and then it fled away.
I do it all the time. There's
But
more than a few episodes of me just
I'm
rambling and going, "Wait, what was I
I'm like,
saying?"
it'll come back. It'll come back. But yeah, I mean, that service component, and just kind of keeping it at the forefront and remembering. I mean, I think it helps unlock a lot of things for us, truthfully. I think it helps us at that point, when you appreciate that impact that you're having, you actually can also really understand the value that you hold
Yeah.
and the way that you're showing up for people. But this was the point that I lost. I'm very sorry. Is that while I don't weigh numbers and I don't have, like, these projections, I still certainly run a business. I own a business, right?
Yeah.
And so every year I do desire to grow and to continue to grow, but I don't use metrics as a definition of that. I look
Mhm.
at who do I actually need to be a match for the growth that I desire to see in my business. And then my actions are really informed by like the becoming. Like, okay, in order to scale from this amount to this amount, let's say, like what do I need to do to hold that level of capacity? Like who do I need to be? How do I need to show up? How do I need to lead this team? How do I create an even better client experience?
Yeah.
And that's what informs the actions I take. And a byproduct of that is the business growth, or just like the consistency even.
Yeah.
So I like to just kind of give that as an example too.
I think that's a great example. I remember hearing years ago, it's the vocabulary difference of saying I want to be a marathon runner versus I am a marathon
Yeah,
runner. And then it backs into, well, what are the activities you took to become a marathon runner? And then
yeah,
then it goes to showing up consistently with training, your nutrition, your rest, and then ultimately running the race and then changing the title. Um,
entirely.
and
Yeah,
and so it's similar. It's like you are measuring this thing, but you're backing into it with these other tangible and non-tangibles to get there. But let's
exactly.
rewind a little bit to 209, 20,000. God, I can't even speak. My goodness,
So
words
good. We're
words
in
are
it together,
broken.
man.
Words are broken today. To 2009, which was a crazy time. Total sidebar, fun fact. I bought a condo, I think it was late 2008 in Printers Row
Oh, in Chicago?
in
Printers Row?
Chicago.
Stop
And
it.
I swear to God, I spent a weekend there and then we filed for divorce probably a month later. And I never enjoyed the property or Chicago. It was
Oh my
crazy.
gosh. Okay, come back. Like that's like we gotta rewrite part of that chapter. But come back and we'll show you a good time. But that's wild.
Yeah, that was definitely a wild time, but that was a crazy time. Just the whole world, like
Oh,
economically, it was a crazy, crazy time. What compelled you to get into real estate at that time?
yeah. So it honestly goes back to a personal story from when I was 13 years old. I mean, actually, let me share this a little bit. So I moved to Chicago. I'm not from Chicago. I'm actually from California. I'm from the LA area.
Hmm.
And so I moved to Chicago 18 years ago now. I knew one person, but I love this city. And I was like, I want to be somewhere I absolutely love. And I was working in the fashion business at the time. And we had quite a few clients who were commodities traders and would stop in and out on their way downtown to do what they do. And I will never forget the day the market crashed in 2008,
It's
um,
crazy.
because they weirdly walked into where I was working to like a therapy shop. I guess that's what we call it. And it was a weird moment for me where I was like, I don't think this is what we should be doing. Like, I'm pretty sure things are real different all of a sudden. And I felt like a real conflict internally of existing in a job that I was having a hard time seeing a greater purpose in. And
Mm.
that was sort of like a mark of its own. And then as things progressed into 2009 and the foreclosures and the short sales started happening, I I all of the sudden just found myself like in action to become a realtor. And this will make sense in the sense that when I was 13, my parents actually lost their home in LA in a short sale like foreclosure situation in
Oh my
a
goodness.
development that never developed during the like 90s banking crash that happened, and my dad was in that industry. And
Um,
so I vividly remember our parents saying, "Hey, we're moving out. The bank's taking back the house and we're going to go rent in this other neighborhood." And I was so confused how that could happen. Like I thought we owned the house. Like what do you mean someone's like taking the house? I don't understand. And it really sent us on this journey of like changing rentals every couple years and this deep appreciation that I had for like owning your own home and like what
mm,
that represented and what that means from like a true just like metaphysical thing, not even as like a literal material thing. I really believe that our homes are the places where we get to feel like the most safe and secure and free to be our most authentic selves. God willing, you're in a great household environment that allows that. But
yeah.
I know that when you do, what that allows for you to be out in the world and what impact that allows for you to go out and have. And so I just sort of appreciated it since such a young age. And so in 2009, when people started losing their homes, I was like, oh, I know what this feels like.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help my 13-year-old self, but I sure as hell can help people now. And so I jumped in and I got my real estate license. And I just like, I can just picture my like 26-year-old self, like rolling up my sleeves, like, I'm going to help you. And I did. And I didn't, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't let that determine my future. And I learned and I learned and I developed skills that I needed to like really effectively, truly help people.
Yeah.
And that's what kicked off this whole thing for me. Again, it's just like that deep desire to really help and this deep appreciation for home.
That's so interesting. It's fascinating that sometimes those really, really painful moments uh, in a positive way change your destiny.
Hmm.
And similarly, by the time I was 13, we had between my mother and my father's house, I had moved 13 times. And so
Wow.
part of what is the catalyst for me in this industry is to give people, their kids, the that security of that's the home I grew up in, which
Yeah.
I never had. I have,
Yeah.
I have no reference for that.
I mean, I really do believe we go heal where we hurt.
Hmm.
And I think I've channeled that and you've channeled that through this business and through this
Yeah.
industry. And I believe that is the mark of a lot of like actually really great realtors and also
Yeah.
and different industries of all kinds
Agreed.
is is just like a real appreciation and a deep understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, yeah, that's a good, I've never heard that quote before. We heal where we hurt.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah. That's, I was watching a documentary, a BBC documentary. It was really sad. This like young child was swimming with his scout buddies and drowned. And the two boys that were there, or there was a few boys that were there. One of them was like really close to this kid, and a cop police officer came and said something to the effect of, "You did your best to protect him. You'd make a great officer." And years later, he became a police officer.
He became an
And then one of
officer.
the other boys um, was there and witnessed it and felt helpless, and later went on to become a doctor.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so I think there is, it's these moments define us, but I think we ultimately get to choose how they're defining us.
Exactly.
Where like we can be victims, or we can turn this into someone else's benefit or our own benefit.
Yeah. I mean, I think it can turn into a very empowering thing, truthfully. And
Yeah.
I think like I see it on my team. There's a woman on my team who, big reason she does what she does is she wants to be the person that's like advocating and looking out for her peers.
Yeah.
And she will tell very real stories of like, she's like, I didn't feel like I had that when I was younger. I didn't have someone who had my back. I didn't have someone to make sure that I was like making the right decision and like teaching these things I didn't even know. And so she feels so called to be that for her people. And it's generated also like a totally successful top producing business in its own right from that just like deep desire to be something that she wished she had in her life and makes her really good at it. And but to turn it, like you said, to turn it into something way more empowering that can really be of service to others.
Uh, yeah. I mean, in similar to that woman on your team, it's, we're in such a weird fake world right now where everything is sunshine and rainbows on Instagram, and every agent is just crushing it no matter what the interest rates are or what debacles happening in government or whatever with COVID and whatnot. But that's not the reality. And so I do think when people are just authentic and honest, especially with the people they're serving, we just connect on such a deeper level because we realize, like this conversation, oh, I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm
Yeah.
like someone else can actually understand or empathize, and not just empathize from afar, but empathize because they were actually in it too.
Yeah.
It's a completely different experience.
Oh, entirely. And I also think like it should give a lot of permission that we don't have to do this perfectly.
Yeah.
Like we see, yeah, there's a lot of shiny and like sexy things online and all of these things that get portrayed and celebrated. And I don't knock on that. I think it's a part of what we have to do in business, right?
Yeah.
But also like I have, a true standard of excellence that and things that I am very committed to, but I also am the first to say, like, I go through stuff. I'm not going to be perfect. Things are going to happen. I'm committed though, and I'm here to make sure that like your best interest is always looked out for. But like, I think just other agents getting to experience the realness of
Mm.
another agent who is maybe a little bit further ahead on the path, or successful, or whatever these things are, and really getting to see. You asked me a question on the intake questionnaire where you're like, what's something you wish people knew about you, or that they don't know about you? I am the most like normal, like down to earth, like I'm actually might have sweatpants on, sitting on the seat right now, like cross-legged, just like normal girl. Like, yeah, I sell a lot of business. Yeah, I have a kick-ass team and a brand, and I'm super proud of those things. But like, you meet me on the street, and like, I'm just casual, and I'm
Yeah.
unassuming, and I say this because it's like all I want is for other agents to have the permission to just like show up who they are, drop the stories, drop the limiting beliefs, like don't perform. Like truly just stop performing.
Yeah.
Just start serving from like your true authentic place, and watch what that unlocks in your business.
That is so hard. And
I
I
know.
personally struggle with that all the time. It's like today was a conscious choice. I'm like, I'm literally throwing on a jean jacket.
I love
Like,
it, by the way. I think it's super stylish.
thank you. I appreciate that. But I mean, my clients, they see me in suits, like
Yeah.
custom suits and like dressed to the nines. And so, but I'm the same guy. I know that I have the same knowledge wrapped up in my head.
Yeah.
And so, but I also feel like simultaneously that I'm in that point of my career where I have less of a desire to do the dog and pony show,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I'd rather let my work speak for itself or my clients' reviews speak for themselves rather than me having to pitch and sell myself.
Totally.
And so yeah, there's been like my own personal journey within all of this craziness.
Yeah, which is great, and will be such a big part of, I'm sure, what continues to just unlock things with you, because it gives. I genuinely believe our clients hire humans, like they're hiring the person, and and we all hear the line, they like, know, and trust you, and like one of the fastest ways to have someone trust you is to just like genuinely show up as who you are.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, when I started, I was 26, and I think I looked like 16, to be honest. Like, and so I didn't have a lot of credibility, so like I definitely had to show up a little bit to be like, I promise you I know what I'm talking about.
That's why I did the suits.
Right. Like you have to fake certain things
Yeah.
to like work through certain things, absolutely, right? But believing that you have to do it in order to be successful, or in
Yeah.
order for someone to view, like, see it as a certain way, like those are illusions. And I think that there's just so much knowledge and so much skill that can get brought, that when you, like you said, I'd rather my business be for myself. I'd
Yeah.
rather, like, when I open my mouth, someone's like, oh, this really unassuming girl totally knows what she's talking about. And I'm like, yeah, I
Yeah.
do. And I have this great like history and reputation to show you. But by the way, I'm also just going to be who I am.
Yeah.
And they're really are genuinely hiring me for who I am, and then the results that I can deliver.
At the end of the day, with regards to trust, people want to know. Let me rephrase. They trust you based on typically you shooting them straight.
Yeah.
Like, and so if you are incredibly knowledgeable of the market and the data, and you've done your homework, you've done your research, but you're also giving them, and I will straight up tell people, I will tell my clients, you're not going to like what I'm about to share with you,
Hmm.
but it's my duty, it's my profession to be completely upfront and honest with you so that you can understand the information that I have and form the best decision for you in this moment.
Yeah. I'm,
Like that,
yes,
that's it.
that's
And
it.
and I think that just commands a level of respect. Like people are like, I would rather that.
And
I,
deep trust, like deep trust. Honestly, and I say this, I have a couple of like consistent one-liners that I say, right? Where like my job is to educate you so that you feel empowered in the decisions you're about to make.
yeah.
So everything I am doing is through the lens of like giving you the honest information
Yes.
to educate you so you can decide what's best for your family or
Yeah.
you, right? And I have also will say, I would rather be honest with you now than lie to you and have this catch up with us in 3 months from now or 6 months from now, right? Like the amount of stories, we just did a client appreciation party, and the amount of stories came out of clients' mouth that were like, remember that condo you told me not to buy? Remember that inspection where we walked away? I'm like, yeah. Because like I'm not a realtor for a one-time deal. I'm your realtor for life.
Yeah.
And like that means we have the long game here. But I just am that person. I'm just an honest, transparent. I value honesty and open communication above all else.
Same.
I tell them these are the values that I hold in my business, and this is what you can expect from me. And they're like, great, like sign me up, because they would rather have someone just be honest that they can trust than feel like they're being sold.
I know that's the case for me. Like I would much rather, I would go back to the same restaurant if I were to order a steak and pick a bottle of wine, and then the waiter say, "That's, I know you picked this wine, but this other one, per the chef, is going to pair a little bit better. Would you like me to bring you a taste of it?" And that's like such a better than, here's the wine, and I'm like, oh, this wasn't the best pairing. It could have been better. And then they're like, oh yeah, this one actually is better. And you're like, why didn't you tell me that?
Right.
Like,
I mean,
trust
they're
is not everything.
hiring us. They're truly hiring us because they don't know what they're doing. Right.
100%.
So
We're
like
advisors.
we're advisors. So like I'm also the client. If someone comes to me and says, hey, I have a process, this is my process, and I'm like, great, I don't know. I hired you because I don't know what I'm doing. So like, please tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Please tell me if this is a good investment. Please tell me, you know, I just, to me, and I think that's part of it. It's like, I know how I enjoy my advisors and my working relationships and the people that I hire.
Same.
So it's like, I want to provide exactly what I enjoy getting back. And I think that's what creates a lot of alignment in my clientele too, is like, well, I know this matters to me. And so if I show up like that, then I'm going to attract the right type of clients that inevitably make this way more enjoyable, that lead to referrals because I'm working and talking to the right kind of people who are my people. And that's really what's fueled my business. I mean, I'm a referral based business,
Yeah.
and they spread the word. But if I wasn't being honest and I wasn't showing up fully authentically as who I am, is when we start to attract the wrong kind of clientele, or sort of push boulders up hills that feel really, really hard and really draining and lead to a lot of burnout and a lot of resentment.
Yeah.
And I guess I just want to give people permission that it doesn't have to be that way.
It's so true. It does not have to be that way. It's funny, based on referrals. One of the questions I always ask before I send a referral, if I don't know the agent, I've just, was passed their name or introduced to them, is tell me about one of your most difficult deals with a client and how it was resolved. Because that's going to give you the window into, did they see it coming? Did they anticipate it? And how what was their level of like authenticity and their recommendations and their guidance through that situation? You can tell a lot. Ask that of a lender, ask that of an escrow officer, ask that of an inspector. You will get so much information just by listening to whatever they say after that point.
Yeah, that's just a great idea. Because even as you're telling that story, I'm reflecting on my version of that. And what's wild is, and I think this is a good example about talking about aligned clients and misaligned clients, is like I sent this big mailer thing out, and I don't farm. I do not farm. I don't cold call. I don't buy leads. I don't farm. I am a
Love it.
relationship business. This is my relationships that feed my business. But I decided, you know what? Like, I want to send something to the neighboring blocks around me. I had a really great idea, and it was beautiful, and I got a lot of responses from it. And this one person hired me to sell their house, and they were just special little birds. And they were both attorneys.
Oh my God, Kelly. That was the best way I've ever heard that said.
I just was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, but they were both attorneys. They had very strong personalities. They were out to get everybody, candidly. And it was one of those deals where you go, I think I'm going to lose my license because you're just crazy. And you start to think about, did I do everything right? And thank God I have processes and standards and things to make sure I was doing everything right. But I got out of that deal barely alive. thinking, I mean, it was like really one of those things where I was like, they could try to sue me. It was like pocket market and they didn't want to work with that buyer. So they killed the deal. It was like a lot of crazy stuff.
Oh, gee.
Anyways,
Attorneys are
um,
tough sometimes.
they're tough. And I got on the other side of that transaction and I was like, oh, how do we get here? Because
Good
this
question.
doesn't normally happen. And I was like, oh, I cold call. I essentially cold the lead, right? Like I pulled that in. And I
Mhm.
should have asked, where's your other realtor? What do you like about them? Why didn't it work out? I probably should have asked that realtor, how was it working with them? I knew in my gut the first time I met them, I was like, I don't know, but this is a great price point and a great listing. So like, of course I'm going to do it. I had
Yeah.
all the signs, but it was one of those moments in my business where I go, you know what? That's cool. I'm glad to know it worked. I did it. But I also know all of these other beautiful transactions and relationships that I have. And I'm just going to go there and keep doubling down on that because so it was
Yeah.
just, it's funny to hear you give that example and to think like, oh yeah, I have that.
It,
Told me a
it's
lot.
it's really funny. I've discovered that water seeks its own level, but so does
Mm.
mud. And that clients that I've really loved and enjoyed working with immensely and I've kept relationships with after the fact tend to know really cool people.
Yeah.
And those referrals are amazing. And similarly, the agents that are just really collaborative and open and just great, genuinely great people, I tend to like working with their clients too. And you're right.
Yeah.
Those people that got my name off of Yelp or wherever they've randomly found me and then they reached out. The thing that I've learned similar to you very quickly, if people are difficult in the beginning, they're going to be really difficult in the middle and they're going to be absolute hell in the end
Yeah.
and just walk
Truth.
away. I had a client, I'm not zero exaggeration. His job, career was negotiating contracts.
Oh,
Our listing agreement is on the California Association of Realtors. It's issued by them.
yeah.
So it's written by a bunch of
By
lawyers.
their lawyers and all that. Yeah.
It took me, no exaggeration, 2 months of them redlining and changing language before they
Oh,
would sign it. And I, similar to you, I had it in my gut. I was like, this is going to be difficult. Even my manager was like, "Are you sure you want to get into this one?" And then
hmm
I was probably 2 months into prepping it and getting it ready and doing all these things. And I literally called the client and I said, I just don't think we're a good fit.
yeah.
But the good thing was, and I said, here's why. And I kind of
Honesty.
I honestly had the hard conversation with them and I actually pride myself on it. And it was interesting. They checked themselves and
Mm.
after that point, it was actually pretty smooth sailing. But it was like, I'm your advocate and I'm working with you. And I feel like we're adversarial and you're fighting me. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to give you my best guidance based on the information I have. And I'm giving you all that I have access to.
hmm
And we're just butting heads. So I don't think this is not working for me. So,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming it's not working for you. So we should probably figure out how to navigate this. And
Good for you.
they immediately were like, you're right. And it changed the dynamic,
Resets.
but that's not always the case. And so, yeah,
hmm
it's interesting. I've been contemplating farming an area, and you've kind of made me question that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for some people, it's very much how they're supposed to find clients. Like
Yeah,
I'm big on we're all designed very differently, and
yeah,
I've got
sure.
10 women on my team, and everyone's got a different thing here, and that's cool. And different things get to work for different people. But I know that the best things in my life have come from the relationships, like 1 to 2 circles around me,
100%.
and I just like let this be proof too that like that is actually enough to generate like a really successful business. Like I think people think they need to have like tons of leads and their hand in a million different networks, and it's like you really don't.
No,
um,
it's true.
but I think like what you talked about in that example too is like your willingness to be honest and to lead yourself to say, I just need to have an honest conversation with you and also advocate for myself and stand my ground on you hired me as your partner. And so I kind of need this to be a partnership. And not a lot of times what I think happens, which is this dynamic of like, well, you're telling me this, but I own this house, so let me tell you how it's really going to go.
Yeah.
And that's where things get squirrely. And I think just kudos to you for being a great example of like advocating for yourself and being honest and the power of both.
And it's, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's really hard. It's
Yeah.
very uncomfortable emotionally. And then two, it was a $2.5 million transaction. So
Hmm.
I'm also walking away from potentially walking away from a pretty significant transaction. Um, and so there's a lot of internal battle for
Yeah,
sure. To,
for sure.
but I also knew this, if I just drew out a line on this path, it was going to get really, really bad.
Hmm.
And I think now I've had it. Last year was a really tough year, and I'm turning 50 this year, and I don't care anymore. Like I want to work with
Yeah.
people who I just love to work with. Like I want to pick who I work with, period. And I'm not going to be held hostage to somebody who's like hostile and just decides to blow up on me every time we pick up the phone or a text. Like I'm
Yeah.
too old for that. I don't have time to deal with that.
Well, and like two things on this. I mean, one, I want fulfillment. Like I want to
Yeah.
enjoy what I'm doing. I want to feel like I'm actually of service.
Yeah.
I'm not available for the other. And what's really fascinating as I've established that at many different like increments of my career, right? Like where I think you get pushed, you have to remind yourself of that and level up again and again and again of
Mhm,
what you're
mhm,
available for and
mhm.
what you're not. It's what actually was on the other side was so much better than me clinging to that $2.5 million listing,
Yes.
right? And and also in that example you gave of like the discomfort of having that conversation, and I coach a lot of people through these types of things. Like that discomfort is part of your becoming.
Yes.
That is part of you growing into that next version of yourself who actually can hold the capacity of level of business that you want to have, because you cannot have the business you want to have if you can't effectively hold it. And I mean, like, not literally. I don't mean like, how do I spin 20 transactions at once kind of a thing. I mean, who am I as a person? That am I a match for these things that I'm building and becoming? And that comes through being honest and having hard conversations. That comes from knowing when you're out of alignment and when you need to listen to your gut, even if it makes no sense to anybody else. You know, that comes from pivoting paths or taking a sabbatical, which I shared with you that I've done when things make no sense and they're really uncomfortable. But who I became in that process and what that actually ended up making me a match for on the other side was far greater than anything I could have imagined.
Wow. That's so fascinating. And I don't know what your comfort level is in sharing regarding your sabbatical, but I would love to hear more about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'm totally happy to share. I mean, it was 2020. So at this point, I was 11 years into the business.
Mm.
And as we all know, 2020 was a real heck of a year. You know, from the first few months of the quarter to kind of all of our lives being flipped upside down and trying to figure out what does this mean for my life, let alone my business. And then Chicago came back really strong, late spring, summer.
Hmm.
And I was just overwhelmingly busy and very quickly like recognized actually that a lot of the fruits of my labor were paying off and this was going to be the biggest year of my career. But I was so incredibly burned out come August, like deeply
Wow.
burned out in the sense of I wasn't just tired, I was dreading waking up. And I was like, I literally caught myself, Shawn, on a phone with a client, and I was banging my head on the wall while I was talking to this person because I was like, I don't want to have this conversation. Like I've talked about inspections 1,000 times. Like I just had hit this point of like I started resenting my work. I started resenting my clients, which was so unusual given what I've shared. And I
Yeah.
really started resenting the industry. I had some terrible deals with agents, and the way that they were behaving, I was like, oh man, if this is what this is now, I'm out. I'm out. And I really felt like I was sad about it because I love this industry so much. So it was confusing. I was like, but wait a
Mm.
second, this doesn't make sense. Like, I love this for so long and I'm really good at it. And there's no way you just walk away from a business you've had for 10 years that's like producing a lot. but I knew I couldn't keep going. And so the immediate solution that came to mind was I'm going to rent an RV and I'm going to take 4 months off, September through December. And I'm going to drive my then 3-year-old and my husband to the West Coast where my family was, who I haven't seen because of COVID. And we're going to quarantine for 14 days on this RV because that's what you did.
Wow.
And I'm going to peace out of Chicago and go figure out what the hell I'm doing next because I was like, I can't keep doing this. I can't do it.
Wild.
And I remember when I knew that was the right thing to do. And then I was like, all the voices, that's crazy, Kelly. Your business is like booming. What is going to happen if you walk away? But I was like, if I don't do this and if I don't do it now, I don't think this has a good outcome. Like I couldn't trick myself into something
Mm.
positive. So I did it. And let me tell you, it was just the best thing I have ever done. I stepped away. I left Labor Day weekend and I didn't come back until New Year's. And I did not work. And anybody who came my way, I referred to someone on my team and even some people outside of my team because there were certain dynamics. And I just trusted, I had a deep trust in myself that by following and listening to myself and taking care of myself, that
Mm.
would reveal like what this was really all about. And it was at the end of those 4 months when I finally got enough spaciousness to to do a lot of things like napping, which was really weird. I didn't realize how tired I was after 10 years of working as much as we work.
Yeah.
And I was so tired for the first 2 months. And then I kind of like got some space to really think about things. And I realized what happened was the first like 8 years of building Home Collective was super aligned and felt really good and was fueled from a really great place. And then the
Mm.
last couple years, I started buying into some of the crap in the industry about, if you're not scaling, you're dying. If you're not growing, you're dying. Or like if just these things that I think started to fuel some like really poke at some like limiting beliefs and things that I had and fear and lack and scarcity that
Yeah.
started to drive me in a way that was not my driver those first 8 years. And those drivers led me to being incredibly burned out. And so I realized like there was a time where I didn't feel that way. And then there was this. And now my work was to go back to operating in alignment with my values, my definition of success, prioritizing what I want my life to look like and how I want my life to feel. And I don't want to work the damn weekends. And I don't want to work with people I don't enjoy. And I really got clear on not only what I wanted, but that a lot of the answer existed in this alignment piece, this really evaluating the beliefs and the ways of being that can send us off course very quickly. And that's when I realized when I was on that sabbatical, I was like, oh, this is what I had been teaching my team, but I was like, I'm now supposed to take this beyond just my team and really coach this to others in the industry.
Mm.
And that's really what birthed my coaching business was the back end of that sabbatical and realizing like I want to help more people experience this and live this way and build their business in this way.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's like so incredibly powerful. And I 100% identify with what you shared. And I've hit those, and I feel like I'm bouncing off that wall of like, do I love this right now? Do I love the industry? Do I love what I'm doing? And I've definitely gotten to that point when we were all crazy of just you would see the phone ring and it would be a number you didn't know and you're like, I don't have the capacity to take on a client right now. And I would almost have an attitude about
I
it because I
know.
was so buried in doing and I wasn't enjoying it. Um yeah,
Yeah.
I so identify with that. Structurally, it sounds like at that time you did have a full team, so you were able to just hand things. Um, I'm assuming you had buyer's agents and then operations to
Yeah.
kind of run everything?
So at that time, I mean, my team's grown a lot in the last just couple of years, but at that time I had two agents and one admin. And so I referred to them the people that were the right fit. And then I had local agents that I had already identified that I spoke to that said, hey, I'm going to be leaving town for a few months.
Hmm.
If I get a certain type of client, would you be willing to help them? And so I had identified, a couple agents that I felt like if a certain personality type or a certain type of product, or because I can work with everyone in all price points and I like really pride myself in that, but I know that like because I can really find a way to relate to everyone, but
Same.
I know that's not the case for all agents. And so I found a couple of people that I could identify. So yeah, I mean, I didn't just say, sorry, I'm out of town, I can't help you. I wanted to continue to pass them on to the right people.
Yeah.
So I was able to do that. It was not perfect, let me tell you. Like it, had I known I was going to do a sabbatical, I would have probably planned some other things and had some things ready. But we had processes in place. We had standards we were all committed to as a team. We value excellence. Like I knew they were on my team because they knew what the expectation was.
Mm.
And then I had other agents who could meet that too if I needed it. So
I love it. I
worked out.
like almost 2 years ago, just shy of 2 years ago, I actually bought a Land Rover Defender
Yeah.
because it fits me sleeping in the back. And so I built it for overlanding. So I have the mattress, the camp kitchen, the
Are you
like,
doing it?
yeah. So I did it. So when I just like, hey, I need a couple days off. Like I can literally grab my
Great.
fishing pole, throw everything in the back, hop in and just literally drive wherever I want, go fish, and then have a place to sleep right then and there that night.
I
And
love it.
and so yeah, that is my 100%. I'm bugging out. I just don't want to do this right now. I need to like turn off my phone and reset. But
Mhm.
I'm jealous that you did it for such an extended duration because that's what I want to
You
do.
should do it. It's so incredibly possible. Like the beliefs and the stories we tell ourselves are not true. They're
It's so
illusions.
not true. I, I,
It's
I
so,
think the other really hard thing is, uh, and this is a hard truth that I've come to realize, and I still find myself stuck in the hamster wheel. Is it's like I own the business, but the business owns me because I just created a very elaborate job for myself.
yeah,
That's all I
yes,
did.
with many
Um,
hats.
one of my friends, his grandfather, this is years and years and years ago, started the Auto Trader magazine. So obviously did very well for
Fun.
himself. This is all pre-internet, but said to a friend of mine, he said, his grandson, he said, if you are working in the business after 5 years, you didn't create a business, you created a job.
Job.
And that's
Yeah.
always that always sticks with me of like, I I've lost some of my personal autonomy in this process, and I'm trying to figure out currently how to pull the pieces away that I just don't thrive. I don't find joy. I don't wake up early to do them. I don't stay up late because I'm so excited to be doing that thing.
Yeah.
Inversely, I dread it, which is kind of the hallmark of the wrong personality doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. I mean, you're not in your genius, right? If you dread it, you're just
Yeah.
doing it because you can. I mean, you might be in your excellence. Like I've learned a lot about being in a zone of
Hmm.
excellence versus a zone of genius. Like my zone of excellence is real estate. Let me tell you, like I'm really good at many parts of it. My zone of genius is coaching and really helping identify like certain things. But like when it was a really interesting power struggle of like, but I'm so good at this. Like I could keep going,
That's how I feel.
but I kind of feel like I'm dying. So probably shouldn't keep going.
Yeah.
And it's been a deep reevaluation of what is true fulfillment to me. If 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 I have a short course here ahead of me, what will I feel truly fulfilled spending my time doing? And how can I get support in doing the other things that still equally matter to me, that are part of the impact that I'm able to have, but free me up to just doing the things that are really fulfilling? But that takes like deep work around the things that around fear and scarcity and
Mm.
survival and the things that are massive drivers for most of us, because we have stories that if we don't keep showing up in these ways or doing these things, then we're going to fail, or then we won't be prepared for the next thing that happens, or people won't appreciate or respect or value us when they're not true. And like I came back from that experience and I was like, I for 10 years what I did wrong is, and this is where I was like, I listened to the industry, and it's not intentional that the industry does this. I love this industry, but it definitely tells you to build your life around your business instead
100%.
of building your business around your life. And I realized just how
Agreed.
badly that ate me up. Like it just swallowed me whole. It was like, cool, I care and I'm committed and I'm going to show I can do it in all the ways. And the next thing I know, I was working 7 days a week, like 18 hours a day, and really successful, but I couldn't even use any of the money I was making because I was too busy working and
I
I was
know.
totally like not around for my kid. Then I came back and I'm like, no, I want to pick her up from school at 3 o'clock and I don't want
Yeah.
to work the weekends. And I just want to be proof that like you can totally do it. I did
Love it.
it, and like it wasn't easy and it was really uncomfortable, and I had to face a lot of stories and truths that I was holding around that, around where my value and my worth lies.
Mm,
And but it has really truly set me free in a lot of really meaningful ways. It's always work. It's going to continue, something that I continue to work on.
yeah.
Um, because we change and our seasons change, and what used to fulfill us before no longer fulfills us now, and that's okay.
True. I actually wrote it down. I love the zone of genius versus the zone of excellence because that totally resonates. And my zone of genius is listing appointments
Mm-hmm.
and showing up for buyer consultations and coaching. Like those are those three moments when I'm just like all cylinders are
Alive.
firing and I feel so amazing in that moment with like in flow with that other person. But doing the process, the 107 step process of a listing and checking boxes and ordering reports, totally not my jam. I can do it and I can
Yeah.
do it really well. I do not find any passion in that project.
Same.
Um,
Same. And so like for me, it's like really been this untangling from the zone of excellence thing where it's like I can do it really well, and I think because I can do certain things really well, I just you enjoy them, right? Like I'm really good
yeah,
at it, can like have that conversation and like knock it out of the park with that seller. But I've noticed like, so what I've been doing a lot of is like I'm still involved transactionally. Like I still run my real estate business. I'm still involved transactionally. I am not showing houses. I am not taking buyers out. What I'm doing is I love the initial conversations. I love the like, I want to buy a new house and it's kind of what I'm thinking. And to like have these like heart to hearts with people. And also in those conversations, what I realize is something too is like people really hold back. They're like, they don't think that they can really get what they want in life or in their new home. And like, well, I'd really like this, but I'll settle for this. And I'm like, well, let's like talk about that. Like, let's like really break down, like, why are you holding back? Like, why do you think you wouldn't be someone who owns that type of house? And like these really cool heart to heart conversations.
mm,
And then I like get to set them on their path with like an agent who holds the standard and is out showing them houses on the weekend, and I get check-ins, and I have a conversation with someone today who's been working with an agent on my team for a few months, and I was like, I want to check in. I want to hear how it's going. And then certain negotiations and certain things that I get to be a part of, but they're the
yeah,
things that make me really happy, that are the highest use of my contribution to that client. And I think like this is a really big differentiator between excellence and genius. We shift from being a service provider to someone who is contributing to their overall outcome and experience. And
that's
like the
incredible.
sooner we shift from being a service provider to a contributor,
Yeah,
it's like all of a sudden we actually can release those things that we tell ourselves we have to do,
yeah,
when we can really see like this is my genius and this is how I can show up in really meaningful ways that are really like valuable to the clients. Like my clients aren't like, well, Kelly, you didn't show me the house. You know, they get it, and then they pop in and they're like, that was so helpful. Thanks for that perspective or that strategy. Let's work
yeah.
that strategy.
Oh my gosh, I love that, and I definitely want to pick your brain more on that because that's ultimately the direction I want to move my business, and that genuinely resonates with me because I really love the way that you said genius versus excellence because I get stuck in the excellence modes and I only get to like dabble into genius, whereas I want that flipped.
Yeah, yeah. And I can't take credit for those terms. This is part of the there's some books, but like a whole coaching cohort called Conscious Leadership
Mm,
that I've taken and that I've really been incorporating into me being a team lead. but also into my coaching as well around like how are we creating really conscious lives and businesses through choice and not through default and through prioritizing what we want and what we're the most gifted at and and outsourcing the rest. So highly recommend any of the conscious leadership stuff. But
That's so good. You reminded me of, I had a conversation with Adrian Ramsey, who's out of Australia, and he's actually a home designer.
cool.
And he has a whole process to sit down with somebody because he's building a forever legacy home. And he has a process of questions that he asks them to really dig at the core emotions connected to the home. And then within that, it's like finding out or figuring out what is their most sacred space in the home, and then how do I make that their version of perfect. And
Mm,
like similar to you, it's the one interesting thing, and I can't remember if he shared it or if I learned it from someone else, but you generally have to ask somebody 7 layers of questions until you get to the emotional driver,
yeah.
which is
Yeah.
incredible. Like, I want a house. Like, that's not emotional, that's just
No.
directive. And so you have to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, and that's a very sacred thing to do with somebody, and so they have to feel
Yeah.
very safe with you in that moment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just had this conversation with one of the agents on my team with one of the buyers that I knew that was kind of getting referred to her as her partner. And I kept noticing these comments that were being made around like, well, who am I to have a house that's that expensive? Like, who am I? And I'm like, can we
Hmm.
talk? Let's like chat. And that whole conversation was me digging to see because if we can't identify some of these underlying things that are actually going to end up creating resistance in the transaction, then we are starting off the gate with probably the
Yeah.
wrong angle, right? And
Yeah.
so like those like true, but I'm really I'm really proud of like these relationships I built and the way I can quickly establish trust with people so that
Yeah.
we can open up that dialogue early on in our relationship so that I can actually deliver the result they want.
Yeah.
But people withhold a lot
They
or
do.
they aren't even totally always aware, right? The things that are really driving them. And are you doing this because you think you're 35 and you should own a house now? Or are you doing this because like you really truly want to and this feels like an empowered decision in your life and I can support you in that. And neither is right or wrong. It's just a matter of having that type of rapport and connection and conversation. Because if
Yeah.
you do that up front, like I said, it brings down the walls of resistance that will actually help you land that plane perfectly in short course, um, than not doing that.
Yeah. And that genuinely goes back to your earlier point, to really tap into your EQ and be totally tuned in to the nuances of what they're saying, how they're saying it, their facial expression, the way they're holding themselves, the way they're carrying. For you to be tuned so deeply into that, you have to show up. And if you're burnt out, you miss
Yeah,
all of these signs, and you're just trying to shove a square peg in a round hole and go to the next peg and hole, and it's just everything gets mucked up. And
yeah,
so it goes back to that cliche saying that leaders go first. Like, you have to first show up as how you need to be for them, and then they
yeah,
can show up. And so
yeah.
the leader, the advisor, has to go first.
Open up the dialogue, and I think like really truly value your intuition because like we're talking about it
Yeah.
here as like EQ, right? But like intuitively, something's off. Intuitively, you're like something's going on. I'm gonna dance around it. I don't really want to talk about it. Or if or you're an avoider and you don't like confrontation, like, but like those are all skills you can develop, and those are all things you can work
Yeah.
on. But like listen to your intuition. Let it be true for you. And I
Yeah.
think this goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning is like if you are not showing up authentically, you don't have the space to stay connected to like that inner wisdom that's going to help you navigate those conversations and those signals to help you really truly be the agent to your client that they need.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, I just even just the nuances of, oh, it's interesting they didn't respond back to that text from 2 days ago. Like even just noticing that, and it's like, and it
Yeah.
triggers your gut of your intuition, and you're like, let me pick up the phone. Like something's awry. But I think even if you're in avoidance, like that is a skill that it's going to take work, and it needs to be worked on, and it's a muscle, and it will develop. I don't love confrontation, but it's I don't view it as confrontation, and that's how I
Yeah.
framed it in my head. Is I'm actually solving a problem, and I'm helping the client, and so I need to just be upfront with them, and it reframes it in my mind. Like I'm not trying to combat them. I don't
Yeah.
want to fight. That's not my goal. So it's not.
One of the greatest like reframes around confrontation is, can you just be curious? Like,
Yes.
don't confront. Just say, hey, I noticed you didn't respond to my text from 2 days ago. Is everything okay? Like, can we be curious? Because what
Yeah.
happens is people aren't curious and they immediately assign a story. Like, oh,
Yeah.
they hate me. Oh, they ghosted me. They're totally working with another agent. Like, we're so quick to write a story instead of just being like, hey, what's up? What can I, or I've noticed this pattern. Can I like, can we be curious about why does that keep showing up? Like, just be curious. And it literally will solve 95% of problems
But it
in our
also
life and
goes
in our business.
it goes back to rapport. If you have the rapport, like your best friend, if you obviously have a deep level of rapport with your best friend, they can totally call you up out of the blue and say, "Hey Kelly, I'm really curious." And you would just be totally receptive to it because
Yeah.
there's a level of rapport. If you don't have the rapport, shields go up. And so just make sure equal and proportionate that you've spent the time of
Yeah.
building rapport. And one of the things that I literally use this all the time. I open the sentence with "I'm curious"
Mm,
because it
the
indicates
greatest.
to them right out of the gate of I'm noticing something. I'm curious. X, Y, and Z was shared. I try not to say the you or why or
Yeah.
what. I try not to use any of the W's. I try to use a how whenever possible, or just observationally. I'm curious. I've noticed X, Y, and Z. How do you feel about that? Or how does this land with you? Or how could we work through that? Or whatever it is. And it puts the how question puts it in a point of resourcefulness. Whereas,
Yes.
why do you do that? It puts
Yes.
shields up. Shields go immediately up. You're
Seriously.
like, that's like teenager. Like, why did you think that was a good idea? And you're like,
Yeah.
F you.
Yeah. Yeah. Forget you. I'm not going to talk about it. Like,
But if
yeah.
they're like, hey, I'm really curious. I noticed your homework is inconsistent on Wednesdays. Is something going on that I can help you with?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, Tuesday night I actually play sports and blah blah blah. Oh, it sounds like now you can do an empathetic summary. It sounds
Yes.
like you're a little busy. And then
Yeah.
they can either agree with you or correct you. Yeah, I am a little bit busy. Maybe if I don't give you as much homework or homework on Tuesday, that would help resolve the problem. What do you think?
Yeah.
And it's like this whole different conversation of why don't you do your homework?
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's a complete reframe. And like I think there's two, even to like give a real estate example of this, like I had this happen very recently, and I don't know that I had tons of time to have rapport, right? Like I had a process, my process establishes like a pretty nice connection up front. And about 2 weeks into this listing, I could just tell his attitude
Ooh,
changed. And I was like, I could avoid this and I could just keep like charting our course and stick our plan. And instead I reached out, I actually stopped by because I was gonna send the contractor. I'm like, I'll just come. And I said, hey, I noticed it could be me. It could totally be me. I go, I just feel like something shifted. I don't think I can even put my finger on it because I wasn't gonna say you're kind of being an asshole. I was just like,
yeah,
what's happening? Can't put my finger on it. And I go, is everything okay? Has anything changed on your end? As in, are you dissatisfied? Or are you just like, did something happen? Are you
yeah,
disappointed? And he goes, wow, we got some really troubling news about my wife, and there were some test results or there was some stuff happening. And he goes, I don't know what our future looks like. And I just didn't want to pull the rug on this because you'd already invested time. So I was kind of going to keep going this route, but I don't know. And it would just like opened up a dialogue. And I was like, oh my gosh. I go, let's pause. Don't do this right now. Like,
yeah.
we do not have to do it. And it was interesting because I thought he was being a punk the way he was
Yeah.
behaving. He was trying to be considerate of me because I had invested a lot of time and energy up to this point, and he felt bad, like changing course. And it's just that thing, we think that the business, so the point of that too is that he has since referred me business. And
Mm,
we think the business comes in these super literal, linear ways.
never.
Never. It comes from being authentic to who you are, prioritizing service, genuinely caring about people, and
Yeah.
developing skills that allow you to be a true advocate who can communicate, who can have hard conversations, who can be curious, who can have heart to heart conversations that help people actually get the outcomes that they're desiring. And
Yeah.
when you just show up in those ways, it can come from a million directions.
That's so
And
beautiful.
we just get to like give ourselves that permission and release all the expectations and the tactics and these like perfect, cool little roadmaps we build ourselves that tell us if I do X, Y, and Z, I'll get here.
Yeah.
And just like reframe that approach, come from a heart-centered place, and it'll.
And that was such a wonderful reframe as well, because it wasn't a conversation. It wasn't a confrontation, and he wasn't being an asshole. And the interpretation was like, oh, they're avoiding me. And basically like you're triggered in some capacity
Yeah,
and
I
then
had a
when
story.
you had a story that completely not even remotely close to being accurate. But then when you heard the real story, you're like, oh my God, that's heavy. You're going through some major stuff. Like,
Yeah,
here's how I can help. And yeah, it's sometimes you just slow down.
slow down. That gift of curiosity allows us to extend a lot of grace that I
Yeah.
think we would love to get ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think as agents, we always have a desire that like maybe our clients knew that like we have personal lives and kids and parents and shit happening in our lives, like all sorts of things. And
Yeah.
and we have to show up professional, and I totally understand that. But you'll be so surprised when you approach things from curiosity and extend grace, how much that will come back to you.
Yeah. I I agree completely. And I think that's probably the best way to end cap this. Kelly, this was amazing. I really appreciate everything that you shared so openly.
Yeah, you too. I could do this all day with you. So again, thanks for having this podcast and creating such a cool environment to just have these types of conversations that don't
That are
often
needed.
make it, behind the back room. So
Yeah,
thank you.
of course. Anytime.